We take you now to Dayton, Ohio. Police are showing new video of the shooter. Let's listen in.
No, there's no indication that he had, he had contact with individuals in there, but there's no indication that any of those were of significance that would generate some kind of a response like this. This was a plan well before he got to the Oregon District.
What's the most important thing you learned from watching that video? What did you learn from it?
Well, I think it was really important, were there co-conspirators? Were there some other folks aiding and abetting? We're not saying that this is the finality of that conversation, but clearly that day, during that time frame, we don't see anyone assisting him in committing this horrendous crime. So that's important information. It also, that plus some follow-up investigation, seems to strongly suggest that his companion had no idea what he was going to do, nor did he have any knowledge of the weapons that were in the trunk of that vehicle.
Do you think he knew exactly where his sister and the friend were and went after them directly?
Yeah, he did know where they were at because they were communicating during this hour back and forth. One brief phone call, we don't know the content of that. That was his sister and he, so don't know what that content is. But also text messages also.
Did he say meet her at the taco stand, or was she just in line to get food?
No, there was no invitation to meet. There was a communication that from his companion that they were, quote, going to the taco stand, and that was about 7 minutes or so before the shooting occurred.
So with her being one of the first few victims, do you believe that he knew that was his sister?
It's an interesting question, and I will tell you that a lot of us have been involved in this dialogue. We all have been reviewing this evidence, including the homicide detectives who are deeply immersed in this. We have radically different views in that regard. And if we can't agree on the interpretation of the evidence, where some are saying absolutely not, he was not intentional, and some saying no, it had to be, I would say it's inconclusive.
What are you referring to? We've been here the question.
Well, it was the question whether the sister was an intentional victim and his companion, who was also shot but survived. And I said basically the evidence has been debated in both directions with individuals in our organization intimately familiar with the evidence, arguing both directions. And if we, based on what we know now, which is the key factor here, if we can't seem to make that call conclusively, that we're divided about how, whether that was intentional or not, I think it's inconclusive. We may get a better insight through historical data looking back, but based on the evidence from that night, I don't think we can make the call.
Is there any indication that the friend who was arrested on firearms charges Friday was at the site when this happened?
None that I'm aware of, no.
So officers fired upon him off screen, right, first, and then...
I'm sorry, what was it?
Officers fired upon him off screen first while he was up Fifth Street, and then engaged again when he got to the door?
Actually, the officer was on screen on the slide on the video you saw. The officer was on screen. The shooter would have been off screen initially, coming down the sidewalk.
And there's more video out there, by the way. So we're.
How big a part did the body armor play of not being able to neutralize?
Yeah, it's a great question too. I would say that the body armor, because of the way it was worn, was vulnerable, and fortunately, we were able to take advantage of that vulnerability.
In the video,
how it was worn?
He had plates, but that's all. Ballistic plates.
Are you confident that none of the people that sustained gunshot wounds were not hit by police gunfire?
That's something that the coroner reviews in his examination. He's not complete, and when he's ready to discuss, that particular what the injuries were and cause of those injuries, then you can have that information.
Do you know who died at what time, the order of the...
We know, well, we certainly know 3 individuals who were shot immediately, right around Blind Bob's. So they were the initial victims. What is a little bit I think uncertain for me. I don't know if our detectives know. I mean, we have someone completely on the south side of the street in front of Tumbleweed, and everyone else is clustered on the other side of the street. So when that shot was fired, that's not really clear for me at this point, although...
She was mobile, so she was shot and ran quite a way, so they're still piecing that together.
Yeah.
In the video where he spoke to one of the people inside the bar, the workers, have you been able to interview that person and know what they talked about?
Yeah, we have interviewed a lot of folks. I can't tell you who all we have spoken to, or if that person, what the content was. I mean, that's a level of detail we're not going to be able to provide.
One of the most important questions right now is motivation. This video, and other evidence you had over the past 9 days, you've had quite lots of conversations about that. Any more insight about the possible motivation of these killings were?
Yeah, and I've kind of tried to create a distinction here between motivation and mindset. I think it's an important distinction to make. Motivation seems to suggest this specific location, this particular night, these individuals who were victims. I think that's way, way, way downstream. That's not the level of clarity we will have now. We certainly don't have it now. And whether we will ever have that is going to be, a question. Mindset, I think we have a lot of information about mindset, historical data about mindset and its progression. But I want to remind you that is the principal focus right now of the investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So they're running with that. We need them to run with that. That's what they do best, amongst other things, by the way. But that is really their role, and we're going to allow them to do that.
So is there anything about the mindset at all that you can tell us?
I don't think more than I've already amplified it. There's this history of obsession with violence and violent ideations, the discussion of interest in mass shootings, and the expression of desire to carry out a mass shooting. I think that should be enough thematically that you should get a pretty clear picture of what was going on here.
Chief, I want to ask you again, that conversation that happened at Blind Bob's with Dorman, you can't say now what the nature of that was.
I'm not aware of it. I mean, that would have been an interview by homicide detectives, and I don't have that level of detail. We really wanted to keep this, and I realize you have a lot of questions. We're obviously trying to fill in what gaps we can, but I will tell you that this was the next big, I think, chunk of the investigation that we felt comfortable of releasing because we have a high level of confidence it's accurate in terms of time frame and location and activity, particularly of the principal individual who is responsible for these mass shootings and these murders.
Is there any evidence that Connor Betts was a drug user?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some evidence of that. The question was that play in that night? Don't know yet. And that's part of a toxicology report that typically takes 6 weeks. The coroner late last week said he would hope to get it in 2 weeks. So that's an important piece, once again, to get the mindset. Won't know that for at least 2 weeks.
Did you find drug paraphernalia in the car or anything?
There was some evidence of drug paraphernalia, yes.
Chief, you said that neither of the conversations in either of the bars, nothing that would indicate that that's what caused him to begin shooting.
No.
He was pre-planned it earlier.
Yeah.
Any idea how much earlier? Like 1 day, 1 week, 1 month?
Hard to say, Mike. I can tell you he was in the Oregon District on Friday night. So what was his mindset then? I don't know. He was not unfamiliar with this area, and the fact he was there the night before, certainly have to consider there was some thought being given to it at that time.
In that 9-minute time frame that he was off camera that you didn't see him, have you had anybody say that they saw him or maybe with someone? Or?
No. In fact, Paul, you folks looked at that. I don't think you saw anybody else in the alleyway during that time.
No, so there's 2 different segments of period that we really can't see him clearly, and that's one is when he's at the car with the branch in the way, and then you're talking about behind Newcomb's.
Yeah.
There were people in the alley, in the parking lot behind Newcomb's, Blind Bob's. There were some people back there. There was nobody that went back to the area where, from either side. We have video from the Newcomb side, and then we have the video from Blind Bob, or from Hart Mercantile, actually. So nobody went back there. There were no vehicles that came into play during that point. So he appears to be back there alone.
What did you mean by charged?
So to the
Chamber round.
Chamber round. Basically, your bullets are in a magazine of some type. When you charge a gun, you are working the action so that one of the rounds goes up into the chamber of the gun so it can be fired.
Chief, how is getting into the cell phone change this investigation, or what have you learned that you didn't know before?
Well, was just informed. I talked to Todd Wickerham Sunday night because this was on my mind a bit, and had been informed then that he had gotten a phone. I don't know. There's a lot more detail. I don't have a high level of detail what was in there, but I don't have a sense there's anything that's particularly revealing at this time. They have to have an opportunity to go through that, and there's other evidence too they have to go through. So nothing that I'm aware of at this time that emerged of significance in its initial examination.
Chief, he had said it to a number of people. He had said it to a number of people throughout the past decade or so, had made references to some sort of mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of any diagnosis, and if so, of what?
No, I'm not aware of any diagnosis. I am aware that he had undergone some treatment. And I can't comment further on that, but I am aware of that.
Do you think that Peppers was his destination?
It seems so. It seems so. Yeah.
Chief, are you thinking that he had the weapon in the backpack disassembled in that 8 minutes or whatever that span of time was?
Correct.
How he assembled everything?
Right. I don't think he could have put that weapon in its fully built-out state in that backpack and not have it sticking out. So to some degree, I think it was disassembled. I think that's a pretty fair conclusion to draw. And, of course, you had that drum magazine, too. So, yeah, I think that's part of the explanation for the 9 minutes, right?
Right, and that's noticing the fact that the backpack appeared to be weighed down. So it's safe to say it was probably in the backpack. And we've checked with a lot of our weapons techs and the SWAT guys. They all kind of concur that most likely that weapon had to be broken down to some extent.
Is there any evidence that,
Sorry, hang on, Mike.
is there any evidence that Megan Dutz had a chance to confront Connor when he was shot?
None.
She even recognized
There was a question even of visibility, quite honestly, from that alley, because you have the patio blind bobs, you have all those umbrellas, kind of hanging down. Her and the companion are on the opposite side of the taco stand. So there's a real question, could he even see who that was on the other side? Which is why I'm saying this, the evidence seems to be questionable, although it's very clear 7 minutes before he started shooting, he knew they were there.
But they didn't know that there was any guns in that car.
No indication that they knew.
Did you learn anything significant from the companion?
That's still, like I said, it was a conversation in progress, but I think probably that of greatest significance, there does not seem to be any indication that he was aware, as I said before, the existence of the weapons in the trunk or what the assailant intended to do that night.
Did he say anything about why Bess had left them and separated?
No, I don't think. I mean, he may have, but if that was part of the interview, I'm not aware of the response.
Have you learned important investigatory information from any of the other people who were hurt?
That has been, I would say, a bit of a work in progress, and at this time I don't have that level of detail. I mean, it was literally, to now be able to tell you today, it's not 14 gunshot wound victims, it's 17. So just trying to get their identity, demographics, we need to get offense reports, we need to get medical records. I mean, that is a lot that goes into trying to establish what happened and how they were injured, et cetera. So.
Chief, just your thoughts on 1 week out, just your thoughts on the community, your police officers, and who we are.
Well, this community is remarkable, just remarkable. I'm amazed at their response, just amazed. It's so gracious, so grateful, so caring, So this is a beautiful community.
And what do you have to say about your policemen and women?
Wow. Yeah, their response was crucial. Their response was immediate. Their response was effective. Their response was compassionate.
I know you said originally that you were confident that Connor Betts had acquired these weapons legally. Are you still confident in that?
Yeah, there's no indication that there was anything unlawful in the purchase or acquisition of those that I know of at this time.
But if he potentially was a drug user and filled out the form 473 and said he was not in order to get those weapons, could that potentially still be a possibility?
Could be. Part of that is going back historically and trying to determine that, right? And, was it occasional drug use or was it daily drug use? I mean, there's a lot of gap to fill in to kind of make that call.
Chief, when you say drug paraphernalia in a car,
No,
you're specifically referring to what?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we go into that level of detail, but I don't think it was in possession or was in a car. I thought it was on person. Do we know?
I would wait.
Yeah, I can't. There was some found. It was a car of the person, so there's evidence obtained.
But not clear where you found it.
Or what it is.
So the focus of this,
I think anybody in the room knows. So somebody knows, but I don't know. Okay.
That's not what we're talking about.
Well, it's a question that you guys brought it up.
Brought up what?
You said that you found it in the car.
Yeah, there's paraphernalia. There's no question about it. As part of the evidence is being analyzed.
So is it fair for us to report you found it in the car or on the person?
We'll have to get back. I don't have that level of detail, and nobody in the room seems to have it either. So if none of us have it, we probably have to ask.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's it. You guys don't have any other questions? You're good?
Mayor, can I ask you one question in retrospect of the last week?
Yeah.
6 days since President Trump was here. Your feeling, was it a productive visit from the President?
Look, I think that the victims in the hospital appreciated the President of the United States coming. I think that the first responders appreciated it. I think it was difficult on the community because he has such a everyone has very strong feelings about the president, both positive and negative. And so when we're talking about bringing the community together, he's not helpful there.
Any plans at this point for the memorial permanent placement? We know it's been moved.
Yeah, so I just met with some folks, a member of the business association. We're in the process of putting together a committee to discuss this, to make sure that we have a permanent site. We want to make sure that we have victim advocates there, the business association there, the city there, and then make that decision on the site. So we feel pretty comfortable. It'll be coming, but we're not moving like super fast at the same time.
Do you know who was in charge of asking or insisting that some things be moved around today?
Well, there was always the agreement that we would keep the site up until the funerals were complete, and a lot of the site had dead flowers, et cetera. It was looking a little rough, and I don't think that's how we want to remember victims either. So the cleaning of that up, I think, was just a timely part. We know that people are still mourning and grieving, so there's still space there. So that's not what was done, but we want to make sure that we honor these victims and their life in an appropriate way. Okay, thank you guys. Oh, Chief has one more thing.
Honest person.
Honest person.
Okay, that's the answer.
Item paraphernalia?
No.
Just on his person. How's that? Have a good one, guys.
You've been listening to police in Dayton, Ohio, give an update on the case there. They also showed new surveillance video, and they talked about how this entire shooting lasted a little more than 30 seconds. But within 20 seconds, police managed to respond. It is unclear right now to police whether or not the sister of the alleged shooter who was killed was in fact targeted, and apparently a companion who was joining the shooter at the time, according to police investigation and surveillance video, appeared unaware that this shooting was planned and about to take place. We're going to take a quick break. We've got a lot more news that we're following, including in Hong Kong, and we're also watching the markets on China trade. You're streaming CBSN.